Welcome back to Recovery APN. Andy, how you doing?
I'm pretty good, bud.
It's good to be back here, huh?
It is. I always say that, we have an exciting guest on, right? But like
every time.
Yeah, I mean, what are we going to bring
exciting.
somebody on and be like, hey, we got a dog shit guest? I'm never going to say that. And generally, I'm excited to hear Elliott's story. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about, too, was this is the first time we've actually got to watch some self-examination of the show and some of our shortcomings as hosts. And I've gotten a lot of text messages from people that the co-host, Dan, uses the term right quite often. So that I sit weird and you say right. Do you have any thoughts or any feelings about this, Daniel?
Yeah. I do have a few thoughts.
What do you got,
I wanted
pal?
to address them.
Now's the time.
So first and foremost, I wanted to thank all of our listeners and viewers.
Wow, what a kiss ass.
Yeah,
but thank you. Like
so
and subscribe.
I support you guys. I appreciate you guys. Andy does not, but I really appreciate it. We really appreciate that. A lot of the team here puts in a lot of hard work, and to see that people are listening and viewing means a lot to us. Now going back to the film take.
Good pivot though. Went from my silliness to like a good heartful. Yeah, it's good. Good pivot.
Yes, the word right was used quite often. And what's interesting about it is I do not use the word right in everyday conversations.
I was going to say right there. So real quick, before you continue, me, Madison, the producer who's not here, shout out Madison, and Keith, we have a right, like a curse bucket. So every time you use the word right, it's $5. When we get to 100, you're going to buy us dinner. And that's the plan that we came up with.
I like that idea, but I tend to believe I need at least...
What do you got?
Like 3 or 4 where like maybe they just come up.
Okay, yeah, like just a couple mulligans,
yes.
as we might say.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to start counting.
Yeah, so after reviewing the tape, I wanted to apologize to everyone who's listening for using the word right. I get it.
Way to own it.
Hand up.
Only one to blame.
And then speaking on comments that I've received, I've heard one about you. Yeah. It was from a colleague.
I'd love to hear it.
And I'm not going to throw that individual under the bus, but they were making fun of your shoes.
Yeah, I was told I have old man sneakers, and these are, as we would say in the streets, these are hot Nike Air Maxes, as we would say. They're not old man sneakers, Lisa.
Right. And then I believe your comment was, I'll just throw on my New Balances after.
Yeah, I was going to wear my New Balances, but I decided that was too trendy.
Right. So, all right, we got that out of the way. I will no longer say the R word, and you're going to get new sneakers.
Next pod, I'll have some fresh kicks on. And yes, I call them kicks.
Yeah. Oh, look at you.
Sounds like Andy needs a sneaker sponsorship. What do you think?
Nike, I'm available for sponsorship.
Yeah.
Crocs.
I might be the sponsor and just pay for new sneakers for him.
Size 12, baby. All right, let's pivot.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else from the previous episodes?
No, they've been great. The episodes that have come out, we're getting great feedback on, and we're just lucky to continue to bring on our alumni, and they're sharing their stories, and we're as hosts we get to witness it, and it's grateful for the show, grateful for this platform, and that we give our alumni the opportunity to share their story.
Yeah, I guess one other thing I'll talk about, because I completely agree, and it reminded me of this. I was in the lodge the other day. And I was talking to some clients, and I was talking about the podcast, and one of the clients came up to me and said that as they were evaluating treatment facilities
Options.
They saw our podcast, and it was one of the reasons why they came to the lodge.
I mean, and that's how cool is that?
And that's like the reason why we do it. So
shout out that person.
Correct. I saw them today. I was like, yeah. All right, but without further ado, we'd like to welcome our guest, Elliott.
Hi.
What's up, pal?
Not much. I'm Elliott. I wanted to be awkward on purpose,
Mission accomplished.
Hey.
We got it.
Yeah, I'm trying to process that wink right now. So, I don't know if I was feeling that, but it's kind of funny.
$10 to the swear jar. Yeah, that one, yeah.
Welcome, and thank you for coming. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. It's an honor.
So, what we do on the show is really give the alumni the ability to share their story. ideally what brought them to APN, and go as deep as you want, as you'd like, what their experience was at APN, and then what they're up to now, right? And sorry. And how they use the tools from APN in their everyday life.
Right.
Now I'm in my own head. Fuck.
Now I'm going to say right a lot for you.
I'm going to real quick pivot. Is I think one of the cool things about Elliott's story is he's number 2 client of all time at APN, right? So he brings a different point of view, because when he was here, the lodge was like still under construction and there was a lot of moving pieces, and to be able to grow through that and then come back today and see where it's at is, again, it's pretty cool. So I'm interested to hear his point of view from it.
Yeah. And I have a lot of good experiences from that time. I've been here twice. I was here last year, and I was the second patient when it first opened, and you said 2019.
October 19, yeah.
Yeah. And so I would love to talk about what happened to get me to come back, too, because there was a lot of things that I didn't do when I left the first time that I probably should have continued doing. So the first time I was at the lodge in 2019, and just so everybody knows, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm coming up on 10 years sober in December.
Awesome.
So I was here while being a person in recovery. And the first time that I came out, my life was getting chaotic, like I had helped build this program that existed for adolescent support, and I kind of resigned from that job. I had built an identity in that job. I resigned. I was looking for other work. I was thinking about what I wanted to do with my life. And in that time period, a lot of mental health issues came up. I had never dealt with trauma in recovery. I was just a 12-step guy, going to meetings, doing all that kind of stuff. And what happened was it eventually kind of crept up on me. So around that time, I was losing it, essentially. I had a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, stuff like that. And I reached out for help to one of the original members, and Andy, actually. And I ended up coming out here. I was the second patient ever, and I didn't know what it was going to be like. I was half ashamed of myself because I'm a person in long-term recovery who needed to go to treatment, while being in recovery. I didn't know how people would look at me for that. I was really nervous about it, and it was not really at the time when a lot of people in active 12-step stuff were talking about mental health, right? They were like 12 steps does everything, all that kind of stuff. So everybody I hung out with was just kind of behind the times on that, I think. So I came out, and it was such a unique experience. You guys had a house. There was 5 or 6 of us. The chef situation was kind of interesting. We were going through some transition there.
It was fluid.
Yeah. The only thing that was open was the chalet.
The chalet, yeah.
Yeah, the chalet was there, so we would have our process groups, everything in that room, yoga, stuff like that. So we would hang out the chalet most of the day, go home for lunch, come back, etc. And I'm telling you, I was really lucky. Both times I was in APN, I had this group of people here with me, also getting well, that wanted to get better, So it made our process groups that much better. It made our time spent together at home better. It made walking around the lodge this time better. And we held each other accountable to do the work that we were set out to do. So what happened that time, the first time my therapist was Lana. Shout out Lana.
Shout out Lana.
And she pretty much changed my life. I didn't know that trauma therapy and stuff could be so intensive and get so much out of you. So, and like I said, man, I had never done any trauma work before in my life. I don't even know that I was going to a therapist. I think I was fishing around for a therapist prior to this, and I just couldn't land on anybody I felt comfortable with. And when I had the experience with Lana, I was like, that's totally different than anything I ever.
Yeah, I would also say too, from a personal point of view, somebody that does trauma work and that's also in recovery and substance abuse, and they're involved in the 12 steps, getting the spiritual side and opening up that way, and then combining that with the trauma work and bringing that all together, that'll free you up in my experience personally and seeing it with other people, that's where I see the most growth a lot of times.
It's an intense difference, right?
Big difference.
And like a snapback to kind of the stuff that gave me trauma to begin with, I grew up in a family, both my parents were addicts. My mom died of an overdose when I was 20. My dad died about 2 years before me coming to APN the first time, both of overdoses, right? And so my childhood was very chaotic all the time until I eventually moved out of my house when I was 17. I mean, every kind of child-related trauma you could have is a part of my story. We were poverty level, low income, evicted from Section 8 housing, welfare, food stamps. We were part of the system for sure. Actually, that's how I was trained to live most of my life. And I got sober at 26. And, I was just kind of hit the ground running, trying to take care of me and change. And I knew my family wasn't trying to get better at the time. I was actually kind of the black sheep for being in recovery for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was none of that for me early on. The rooms kind of helped me
connect almost. Yeah,
create like a family-like scenario. So yeah, when I began to do this trauma work, I didn't realize like just how much there was to unpack from that. I probably would have lied and been like, oh, I'm just a normal guy, my family's whatever, like they did the best. That's probably what I would have told you. But yeah.
Was APN the first treatment center you've ever been to?
So when I was 26, I didn't even have Medicaid.
What a different experience you probably had. Yeah.
I was less than Medicaid, and I got scholarship to a state facility where you maybe met your therapist once or twice the whole entire time you went there. And you sat through groups that were pretty much 12-step stuff, right? Like that's all it was when I went. So then I started working in treatment after I had a year sober and had been working in it ever since, which brings a whole other dynamic to me having to go to treatment myself.
I got a question about that, right? Because obviously we work in the field, right? Was it difficult being in the field, being sober, but still being able to ask for help, saying, hey, internally, like I got a lot of shit going on and I'm feeling just not at peace. But hey, I'm sober at the time, 6-7 years. I should be fine, or I should be peaceful. Whatever our minds tell us. How difficult was it for you to reach out at that point in time?
It was chaos in my head for real. I really wanted to be normal, but at this time I was like, you know what? Like I have a lot of trauma. That's the bottom line. And luckily, like my best friends in South Florida, which was where I was living at the time, my roommate's a therapist. My best friend was in school to be a therapist.
Shout out Dan, not this Dan,
shout
different
out Dan.
Dan.
Shout out different Dan. And like they were on me. They were like, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go. And actually Dan's who told me to call you. So Dan was like, you got to call Andy and try to get up there. And I knew people, so it wasn't going to be a problem. And at this time, like I said, like I had just crossed from job. I didn't know if I even wanted to work at treatment anymore. So
what I'm thinking about is how strong you have to be to make that decision and admit that to yourself, which is one piece of it. I work in treatment and I need to go back to treatment, and I didn't relapse.
Yep.
And on top of that, having to reach out to others and admit that externally. So you're doing it internally, which is like, a big ego shot. And now having to do it externally, I don't know, that's like, it's crazy. And I give you all the credit in the world to doing that because I don't think many people would do that.
What I would say real quick, and I'll obviously let you go, but in the AA world and in the treatment world, there's this notion that we're supposed to be the healthiest people in the world, right? And we're just sick people, just trying to just trying to do better every day, right? So for you to reach out in the treatment world for other help, and then in the AA world where we're supposed to be killing it, again, it takes so much humility. But again, most people just sit in it. And they're just miserable, and it just eats at them.
And the thing is this, like, I'm not a slouch in recovery.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm leading meetings,
Very
and I'm
active,
sponsoring guys, and I'm doing this stuff. And then when something's going on with me, it's even more like, oh no, And so, and sadly, there is a stigma that exists in these stigmatized subgroups. It's like, you can be stigmatized for then needing additional stuff. And another fear I had was like, when I go to mental health trauma treatment, are people going to think I relapse? Is it going to be hard to come back from that and like prove that I didn't actually relapse? And the reality is, yes, that did happen. But there's something that happens. Like when I first got sober when I was 26, I realized I had to surrender my whole entire life as I knew it and start over, right? That was the first surrender for me. This surrender was like, I need help or this is going to ruin the rest of my life. If I don't address this right now, my life's always going to be this stagnant place where I have anxiety, where I have like other issues, where my character defects are just like piling up and I don't know what to do with them because it's all related to trauma. And
Driving everything.
driving absolutely everything. And there's help you can get for it. You know, like that's the thing is like, and I don't know that I realized it was going to help that much with all my character defects and everything like that, right? But it really does. When you do this additional work on yourself outside of just like the rooms and stuff like that, it's a game changer for your whole outlook on everything. I'm telling you. So
I have a question for you. We're talking about, your experience leading up to APN and how this trauma and anxiety was really ruining your life. Do you have any like real life examples of things that you had faced leading up to coming to APN for this realization to happen?
For the first time? Yeah. So that job I had, right, where like I wrapped my own identity around it. I would get resentful real easily. I mean, me and the owner would be screaming at each other sometimes on the phone. I would come home kind of miserable. I was judging everybody around me. I was just like a ball of negative energy, essentially. And I knew in my mind, my view of the world was just kind of skewed by my trauma, right? I mean, I'm raised super poor, all this stuff. I had resentment against people from wealth. I had resentment against all that stuff. I'm living in South Florida in an area where mostly all we're doing is helping like wealthy people and stuff like that. And I was angry about it, like I was angry about it. And it was like really kind of crushing my ability to advance myself in any way. I didn't know that was ever going to be able to be dealt with. I literally thought that was just a part of my character, part of who I was.
I got to pray and ask God to remove it, right?
Yeah.
The AA side of it.
Yeah. And it was never removed, and I didn't know why. Right now I'm a big believer in God,
Huge.
right? I have a degree in theology. That's kind of my thing. Love God. But I also know that God put things like this here so that we could find it, right? Like so that we can actively take charge of like some of the gifts that are available to us as we trudge this road.
To seek professional help.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, doing that was like a big thing. And when I surrendered to come to APN, I had to throw all that away. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And if people think something about me, I don't care anymore. I had to reach that place. And luckily, with like Andy, my buddy Dan, Terry, shout out Terry, who helped me get in here. Like, I just knew it was going to be okay. I knew I at least had a couple people in my court that were going to support me and know the truth about why I came.
So I'm curious to hear, you're leaving APN for the first time.
Yeah.
What's the plan look like? Then what actually happens?
Yeah.
And what does it look like? And then obviously what happened was a year and a half later when you decided to come back for more like a refresher almost.
Right. So I left APN. I was supposed to move from South Florida back to Maryland and didn't, right? That was one of the things.
And real quick, for everyone that's been through APN, we didn't have drivers yet at that point, so we put Elliott on a shuttle from Beaver Creek at like 7 a.m. back to Denver.
Yeah,
I remember that.
So I was supposed to move back to Maryland, right, and like kind of recalibrate myself because I was in between jobs. I was supposed to immediately start going to therapy, which I actually did that. I wasn't, because of some other stuff, supposed to like enter into a relationship or start dating too quickly, right? And the only thing I did was start going to therapy immediately after getting home, right? With the therapist that Lana had hooked me up with. So I get back. It's around Thanksgiving. I immediately meet a girl. I start a relationship.
Like within a day, within a week?
Within probably a week. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm in a relationship probably within 3 weeks. And that was interesting. I was definitely not in the right place. I definitely, my mindset was not there to be able to like successfully do something like that. Time went on and I kept up with the therapy a little bit, but I kept cutting it down to save money. And eventually the therapy, I just pushed it away, right? Now, at the time I pushed it away, I was in a long-term relationship. There was a lot of kind of emphasis on maybe like getting a house one day. So I was like, I need to save more money to get a house. I pushed the therapy aside. And then what happened was about 4 or 5 months go by. That relationship ends. It was a huge thing. And then a couple days later, I get temporary custody of 3 children in my family, because one of my loved ones needed to go to treatment. I took custody of these 3 kids. I had never had kids. I never even changed a diaper. I learned real quick in one day off to treatment. That person went. Then I have these 3 kids, took care of them for like a month.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, took care of them for like a month. I was really proud of myself at how that went down. I thought I did like a good job. And then as soon as that loved one came back and they were gone, I picked up a lot of old behaviors. I started getting anxious again. Work addiction was at an all-time high. I was sleeping about 3 hours a night. Even when I was in the long-term relationship, that seemed to be the case. It was like 4 or 5-ish hours of sleep a night. She would look at me and be like, I'm concerned about how you wake up after 4 or 5 hours and you're moving to like start working and plot your day and everything like that. Like, you're going to crack. So I did.
It's so funny how addiction, right? Drugs, alcohol, it can go to sex, it can go to working out, it can go to working, it can go to like all these different areas. This mental health, this trauma pushes it, where if I'm not dealing with it, it's just going to move from different things in my life. It's going to show its face.
And you would think nothing of it unless you hit a bottom, you know? And so, because you get pats on the back for working hard, you know? You get like raises and you get like notoriety and people start knowing your name in the field you're working in, right? And that was happening for me. So I'm like, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm like a working man in the world and I'm like grinding and I'm just trying to help others. That's my job, you know, like just serving God, helping others, blah, blah, blah. But I burnt out big time. I went into a state of panic attacks regularly, anxiety regularly, like nightmares in my sleep, not sleeping hardly at all. And I won this big award in my county, right? Like for being like a servant of the county. And it was presented to me by the county executive, all this stuff. I'm having a panic attack the whole time I'm getting this award. Wow. And nobody knew, right? The only people who knew what was going on was my sponsor, my best friend, Dan, my buddy, Eric, and my roommate. And my roommate was coming in my room every day and I'd be crippled by anxiety, just laying on the ground, right? Just laying on the ground or like hands on my head, just like practically ripping my hair out or like playing the same video game over and over again, like trying to stop my head from racing. And it was tough. And the way I work, my town, like a lot of people know me. It's hard for me to go anywhere. Like I couldn't go to the hospital. I couldn't go to like a crisis center. People there know me. I work with them, you know? And so I didn't know what to do. And my roommate gripped me up, you know, shout out Earl, gripped me up and was like, you have to do something. And he's in school for psychology, and he was like, you have to do something. My sponsor then verified with him, like, you have to do something.
I find it so intriguing about like the workaholic mentality, because I suffered from that as well. And I think you brought up a very interesting point. People, the external applause you get for working hard and grinding, like justifies it like in your brain that like you're doing all the right things. Like I'm working 15-hour days. I'm connecting with this individual. Oh, I'm going to this conference. Everyone knows me. They trust me. Oh, if in your case, I can imagine people need help. Oh, let me go to Elliott. He'll know the right place. All these other suggestions, right? But internally you're cracking, but like you're getting all the awards, the applause, and all this stuff. And like, it just justifies everything you're doing is right. But in reality, it's totally wrong.
Yeah.
And you have no work-life balance at all. And I suffered from that from the age of 22 for like 11, 12 years. I just thought like the purpose of life was to work as hard as possible and make as much money or get whatever like awards. And that was what life is about. And like, you don't, and again, like for me, it was like sobriety and like pausing when agitated and like kind of like allowing myself to separate being at work and having a personal life, not combining the two and not making one a primary and one not. And it's crazy because like I hear so much of like we come from two different backgrounds and two completely different stories, but like that workaholic mentality is like, you know, I was just thinking of me.
Well, it's also our identities get wrapped in it, right? It's like, who am I if I'm not the best worker? Who am I if I'm not the best AA or if I'm not the best workout?
Especially when you're in recovery because you feel like there's wasted time or something too, you know? Like I wasted all that time. Like now it's time for me to actually be useful to the world and not take from it. And now it's time for me, like I owe it to everybody who I've ever harmed to
live the most productive.
Yeah, to put love in this world rather than like fear or chaos or whatever. And so you're running around with that on your back. You're running around with, for me, it was like a lot of self-hate and shame still. It followed me, right? Like just because I was 9 years sober, whatever, 8 years sober, didn't mean that my view of myself wasn't still stuck in the me I was when I was using, right? And so everybody knows, like, I used heroin, I drank, I smoked crack, I did everything, right? So, like, it wasn't like small potatoes, some of the stuff I was up to. I was like a rough addict.
Full blown.
Yeah, and so, like, I hated myself for living that way for so long. And then I get sober and I still have that on my back, like, you'll always be that. Essentially would like ring in my head, you know, like you could try to be good all you want. You'll always be that. And something my therapist in here this time, Michael, shout out Michael Seeley.
Well, I guess before we get into this experience, one question I had, and you kind of talked about it, going back to having to admit while working in treatment, while working in this vertical, having to admit to your fellow peers that you needed help and going back to treatment. So now not only are you doing that again, but you're also having to come back and go to the same treatment center. So is that like another ego hit that like caused any level of anxiety, or is that like, didn't even think about that?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think this is a God thing, to be honest, because I called some people for help. There was a couple options, right? It was like mid-COVID-ish. It was like the big hit of COVID was over. Most places like my state, like you didn't have to wear a mask going places or anything. So, but some of the places I called were still very strict with that. And now, like, I know some people are going to be like, oh, what's that mean about what he thinks? But whatever, here or there, I didn't want to have to go somewhere where I was going to have to literally wear a mask the entire time I was there. So that did play a big reason why I chose APN again, right? But what I didn't know was that was actually going to be the best possible thing I could have done right then, right? Now, there's a lot of good programs, and I'm sure they're all great, but what I needed this time around was the exact experience I got at APN. It changed my life, I'm telling you.
So it's interesting because I had a similar situation where I had to come back to APN twice. And I asked that question because in my experience, I had that like anxious bubble. I was ready to let go and allow other people to tell me what to do and me to listen and just take direction. But for whatever reason, my ego was still like playing a big part inside of me. And so when coming up to the lodge, what are people going to think? What type of sarcastic comments am I going to get? am I going to feel welcome? Am I going to be the butt of the joke? And I have thick skin, but people who say they have thick skin really don't have thick skin at all. And I was just ready to take on like all the comments. But I will say, and I talked about it when I shared my story, the amount of love and support and happiness that I got when I walked through those doors at APN was more along the lines like, we're happy you're here, versus, you know,
I can't believe you're back.
You know, like, oh my God, I can't believe you failed. I can't believe you couldn't stay sober, this or that. It was more along the lines of, so happy to have you back. So happy you're not dead or, you know, still struggling type of thing. And I was just curious if you had a similar experience or not.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So a lot of the same staff was working here when I came back.
It was a whole different APN though when you came back physically.
Yeah, physically, it was like, because we're in the lodge now and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, every staff member that was here when I first came, when I was the second patient, came up, made it a point to see me within my first or second day here. They gave me a hug. They sat down with me, you know, like, it was like having a one-on-one with like every CA, case manager, admissions person that I knew who was working here. And it really made me feel like that much more grateful to be
that it was like the
back.
right selection too.
Yeah.
Well, you started to talk about it before, but like what was clinically and with your stay, what was different this time? And like, why was it different? And why was that exactly what you needed, as you were saying earlier?
Yeah, so it's interesting because a couple people were trying to tell me that the differences that happened were like made it like less good of a program or something, right? That was something I heard. And so when I came up, I was like, not sure what I was going to get myself into. And somebody was like, oh, like, you got to meet this therapist, Michael. He's really good and stuff like that. And there were these other programs too. There's a professionals group. Yoga was now like every single day available to you. The gym is awesome now. We used to just use like this little Catalera gym, which was like okay-ish. And just like the views from the site are incredible. The other groups that exist here were amazing. I mean, like, it would be like rotational. There would be different groups every day, and you could pick often which groups you went to, you know, like in the evenings and stuff like that, like the later groups. So I kind of bounced around and tried everything out. But I'll tell you, like, for my work addiction, the professionals group was just amazing, I thought. And I'm going to just give this as a warning to people listening. You have to be willing to do the work while you're here. You're not going to get anything out of anything just sitting there attending something, right? Like,
so funny you say that. Didn't I say that this morning?
Yeah, and we always talk about willingness on the show. Like, you gotta work when you're here.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I was talking to a potential client today. And again, I was simply easing his anxiety and fear about coming to APN or potentially coming to APN. And as you know, you talk about everything great about APN, the things you just labeled, right? Whether it be the gym, the groups, the therapists, the views, this, that, the other. Nothing's going to work unless you're willing to like give up and put in all the work you can and attend all the groups and listen. And if you don't do that, all the other things just go away. And I don't want to call it a waste of time, but like you're just standing still. And so I'm like very, very happy you brought that up, because I think that's like the most important part of, you know, what we could do here is that like trust us and trust APN and allow us to help you.
Yep, exactly. It's like, I think some people think they go to treatment and treatment just makes them better, right? Like just the physical act of going to a treatment center is what makes them
It's
better.
like going to a doctor. I get a pill and my antibiotics. You know,
yeah,
like,
I'm good. I just take this pill. I'm good.
Yep.
You know, that's just simply not the case. Like, it's about the effort that we put into getting better around here.
it's like working out.
Yep.
If you watch the bench press machine every day, you're not going to get any stronger.
Exactly. Yeah. Or if you're lifting the same amount of weights, you're never going to get, you know what I mean? Like if I got 10-pound dumbbells and that's all I ever do and I never move up, well, guess what? I'm probably going to look exactly the same.
Exactly.
So, and that's what it's like here. It's like you come in and it's hard. Some days are hard, and there's topics that are hard that come up, and you want to not say anything. You want to like just let somebody else do all the stuff. But if you have an inkling that you need to say it, you need to get it off of your chest, and you do, it's going to make it that much better in the long run, you know? And I'm telling you, every single day here, there was a group where that happened to me. Every single day.
That's great.
My process group here was so tight that we're still friends. You know what I mean? Like, we held each other accountable. We were brutal. We cried together. We ate lunch together, breakfast together, dinner together. We like walked around the campus together. We smoked a lot together. And
cigarettes.
Yeah, that's the move. In treatment, you might start smoking cigarettes again. Yeah.
Wait, I have a question for you. I don't want to divert you from the process group. It does sound great. It's incredible relationships. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're the first person that's come on the podcast that was part of our professionals group.
Kyle?
Professionals group
wasn't there yet. Yeah.
So and again, I would love to hear more about your experience in the professionals group, because I do think a lot of listeners or potential clients are coming with professional backgrounds.
Yeah.
And I would just love to hear your experience there and things you worked on in that group.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. Like, so I'm in there with a bunch of lawyers, doctors, salespeople, stuff like that. And then there's me.
Real quick. And remember before, who were you always resentful at?
Yeah, the wealthier people. Yeah, and I'm here in the professionals group.
Yeah.
Actually, like, covering my treatment.
Right?
Yeah. Well, don't tell everybody. But yeah, so I'm in there and I'm with these people, and like, we're talking about ethics, we're talking about work-life balance, we're talking about like trauma in relation to the workplace and stuff like that, where we're just getting down to the bottom of stuff that I knew existed but never wanted to take a look at. We're talking about how to hold boundaries with our own work life, stuff like that. And I'm just like not wanting to hear it, but hearing it and knowing if I don't implement it in my life, I'm going to suffer with mental health because of it. So it was tricky.
I like how you phrase that, because I know, like, I can relate to it, and I'm sure a lot of people can, is all topics that you've heard about before, setting boundaries with employees, work-life balance, and all these things. And in my opinion, what I always thought about it doesn't apply to me, right? I'm good.
Yep.
Like, I'm good. I don't need boundaries. I don't need, I could work 15-hour days and be good and be happy. And until you, like, sit down, and for me, it took time to, like, hear other individuals like talk about their experience in it and why it affected them, then to me, I was like, more eye-opening. Wow, like, that real life example affects me, and I have those same exact things. It's not something I could push under the rug anymore.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, man, those groups were awesome, and it made like that group of people that much closer too, you know, because we were sharing stuff and relating to each other. And I remember at one point in there, and I mean, like, you got lawyers in there, you got like salespeople in there, and unanimously they would say things like, Elliott is the most work addicted person any of us have ever met, because, you know, like, I snuck my phone for a little bit and I wasn't supposed to have it because of my work addiction and other stuff. And I had it, and they would catch me, and I would be on Salesforce and like checking emails and doing stuff like that. And eventually somebody in my process group called me out on it.
Thank God.
Yeah. And I handed my phone over to my therapist, extended, and did some time without all that blocking me from actually like doing even more work, you know?
And listen, like, there's also, like, how good is it that the group feels safe enough and confident enough that we can call each other out and be accountable to each other, hold each other accountable. And again, that might have been the most impactful thing in your stay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even from, and you talked about how the staff was great, right? And the therapist, but that's a peer. And that was probably the most impactful, you know, element.
It is. I was telling somebody this outside, but it's like really about like the census, which is like the population of the treatment center that you're in.
Census.
Yeah, the population of the treatment center you're in. It's like about holding each other accountable. It's about having that camaraderie. It's about like sitting with your peers and like getting to know them and getting to know each other. That helps build you up to a place where you're even confident and comfortable enough to like do even more work than you would normally do.
I'm putting myself, I agree with everything you said. However, I am putting myself in the position of me getting called out by a peer and like what my reaction would be.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I don't know. I would love to say I would have a similar reaction that you had. Take it in stride, give it up,
learn
from it, move on, and extend, go above and beyond there. Gun to my head.
I think it depends on the person.
Gun to my head, there's definitely going to be whether a grudge or there's definitely going to be a lot of animosity towards that person.
Well, thank God Elliott was a little more mature and was able to hear that feedback and know that that was something he needed.
I think if it wasn't people I loved and that I was also calling out and they were accepting my call outs, I don't know if I would have been that receptive.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
And listen, like spirituality entered at that point. Maybe maybe your walls were down. You know, like it's what.
Because I knew I shouldn't
be
doing it. Yeah, I knew I shouldn't be doing it, and it's kind of funny because like once I gave up my phone and did stuff like that, there's a level of withdrawal that comes from that too because you're used to being needed and you're used to being like all this stuff.
100%.
And so when you give up that, you go through this phase of like, oh, who am I now? You know what I mean? Like, who am I now? I don't know, you know? And
no dopamine firing.
Nothing. And then you're sitting in your room on your little APN iPad or whatever. Like, what do I even do with this thing? I don't know.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, Elliott.
Good pivot.
Because for those individuals that are in that exact predicament, they will now have access to all of the podcasts.
Right on their iPads.
Right on their iPads, both the Recovery APN iPad podcast as well as Lana's podcast, Trauma in a Box.
Trauma Unboxed.
Trauma Unboxed.
Therapy
Unboxed. Sorry.
Shout out Lana.
Can we cut this? I don't want Lana to be mad. Therapy Unboxed.
No way we're cutting that.
Nope.
We love Lana.
No, we do. And it's great. I watch them. But yeah, so now they have the ability to watch these and listen to all of them and get the attention they need. And if they wanted to interact with us, they could reach out to us too. So
nice.
Unfortunately,
Good
these
pivot.
weren't live
Yeah.
when we were there.
No, there was like, I don't think there was anything on there. There was like a big book app and like stuff that didn't work or whatever.
It was in early stages for the app. But
Yeah.
let's so talk to me about as you're discharging and now what does the plan look like? And then what are you doing this time because of what you didn't do last time, right?
Yeah, so I'm pretty lucky because I left. I was in IOP for
Shout out telehealth, Lisa, Carrie, and the team.
Oh, yeah. Can you talk about the IOP portion?
Yeah, so telehealth IOP, I was doing groups. I did like a mindfulness, and Michael had a group on there, which I was like, I got to get on that. So I was on that, and I was attending 2 of those a week and doing regular therapy once a week.
Individual.
Yeah, individual therapy once a week. So I did that pretty strong for like my first 60, 90 days out of here. Out the gate, I just made it a priority, right? When I got back home, luckily, I'm blessed to have a job that kind of knew the nature of what I had been experiencing. And they gave me a break. They were just like, take it light this first 2 months back. Just take it light, do what you can. You know, we know how you are, so we know you're already going to do a lot more than you need to, but just chill. And so it gave me time to really make that stuff a priority in my life. I did that. And I, of course, like kept in, like Michael was leading the IOP group I had, and I was letting him know of everything I was doing. And I was supposed to leave, and this time I was supposed to bounce back to Florida because Maryland, I had like with my work and life and everything. And the reason I couldn't even ask for help in my own area, it seemed, was it was a lot of pressure for me. So I returned back to the same job. I was supposed to maybe get a different job, whatever. But I just didn't feel comfortable. I kept Michael in the loop. He kind of was like, look, this is your decision. If you're going to continue doing this, there might not be a need for that. So just stay firm in this. And So we kept going, and I kind of stuck with that. And I mean, and I still do individual therapy every single week. That has not stopped. So with that thing going on, what I realized, I'll tell you a big epiphany I had this time in treatment, right? And this might be a controversial take. This is a hot take, right?
Here we go.
So my whole recovery, I was pretty hardcore that I'm like an alcoholic addict, and I'm in recovery from alcoholism, right? What this stint in treatment taught me was I had an extremely traumatic childhood. And what I learned was the character defects I was still running on, the other addictions that kept popping up, they were trauma responses to life. You know, I was clinging on to something to navigate my own trauma. And what I realized is I'm a person in extended long-term recovery from trauma. So the way I view what I'm in recovery from these days has changed. Now, am I still a person who works 12 steps and is active in 12-step fellowships? Yes. Do I still believe I have what we call alcoholism and addiction? Yes. But what do I believe is my primary thing that I need to continue to work on for the rest of my life? It's my trauma. And if I don't come to grips with like the reality that like I'm going to need to continue to work on this for the rest of my life, then I might slip back into those trauma responses or the things that I cope with or whatever it is that gets me there.
Well, what I would say too is a lot of times we hear alcohol and drugs is what? A symptom of the problem.
Yep.
Right. So what's the problem? Right. It's that trauma underneath usually.
Yep.
Sometimes the trauma is something loud. Sometimes it's very subtle. And sometimes it's a mixture of a thousand things. That's the thing about addiction and mental health. It's different for everybody. But for you, underneath of that was driving all that behavior was obviously trauma. And it's the fact that that's like in the forefront of your mind now is huge.
Right, absolutely. And so, and another thing you hear in recovery is what we actually suffer from is the spiritual malady, right? So when I got sober, I really clung on to that. Like, I need to focus on this spiritual malady piece, which means like I have a soul sickness where I cling on to all the worst stuff to make me feel better, right? So I clung on to the God idea very tightly to the point where like I went to school for theology. I still go to church. I still do all that stuff all the time. But I still needed extra help. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't negate the fact that help is available. So now understanding that my recovery is kind of threefold, where it's like grounded in 12 steps, grounded in God, grounded in trauma work. Yeah. That has literally been my focus since I've been out of treatment. I mean, like, I would pray and meditate while I was here every single day. There's the observatory. I would go up there in the morning with a cup of coffee, watch the sunrise, and at night during the sunset, I go up there and I would sit down, pray and meditate, stuff like that. And I was like really trying to tap into that while I was here too. I was really trying to ask like my higher power, what is your will for me in this world? You know, like, why is this happening? I felt like too, like I've been doing so much work my whole entire recovery. Why am I going into an anxiety spell again? And I'm telling you, this year has been the kind of year where I see the purpose of it. And I see like so many people in recovery struggle with mental health stuff and are afraid to ask for help. And now that I get to be open with this part of my story, more people have reached out to me in recovery like, what did you do? You know what I mean? Like, even at work, they come up to me and they're like, the change that's happened in you since you came back.
That's great.
They never would have expected me to be different than what I was.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. It's, I'm
transformational.
Yeah, I'm typically not speechless.
Never. I've known you about a year. You've never not been saying a million things at once.
But no, it's incredible. The transformation, it seems to me that you're just a lot lighter now and freer. You're not like, again, I think you used the words of like an anxiety ball, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like now like you're facing those fears, you're facing that trauma head on, and you're okay with that.
Yep.
Because you have the tools to deal with them. So that's incredible, man. And I think a lot of people I'm sure can relate to this. I know I've related to a tremendous amount of it. And I think it helps people, right? Because I do, and being able to talk about both the recovery piece of substance and then like not being afraid to dig deeper, right? Because like, I don't know, I think that that's such a big like hole to dig, like, okay, or admitting admitting to yourself and other people because of the stigma, I am a drug addict and I am alcoholic. And now it's like, I am those two and I suffer from serious trauma. Yep. It's like another weight. And I give you all the credit in the world, man. I think you're a very, very brave individual and you've put in a tremendous amount of work and you should be extremely proud of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. These days I actually can be proud of myself thanks to Michael Seeley. But yeah, because I learned like, I'm hating kind of the wrong person, like we have a story, but we are not our story, right? Like that's something Michael says all the time. And
say that again. We are our story.
No, we have a story, but we are not our story. So like we might have a past, like
doesn't define us.
It doesn't define who we actually are, and
I like that.
That's helped me step outside of like being ashamed of myself or self-hate, which I really believe self-hate was a big piece of what was going on with me. Mm-hmm. I still hated myself and I'm winning this award and I'm like, oh, I'm a fraud. They don't even know how horrible I used to be. And these days, like, I really don't hate myself as much as I used to. There's still the days when I'm like, it sucks.
Tough days.
You know what I mean? But but then there's just days where I'm like, man, like you are not like how you used to be. And
a little lighter, a little freer right there. Yeah.
And you should be proud, and I should be proud of myself. You know what I mean? Like I've been able to do a lot with my life and so far. And I'm looking forward to doing more and being in the right state of mind to be able to do it, not have to collapse under the pressure because I'm not doing other things to make sure that I'm safe. Yeah, and be present. Yeah, so.
Love it.
No, absolutely, man. Very motivating. And I'll like end with this, like, you should be extremely proud of yourself. I don't know you all that well, but just hearing kind of the bits and pieces, dude, like, you've gone a long way and you've been hard on yourself and you've put in so much hard work and not a lot of people do that. So I give you all the credit in the world.
Yeah, I'm going to double down too. And me and Elliott have known each other for years and some of the same friends, but to see where you're at too. And we've had some conversations too about work and about things. And again, knowing that, hey, there's growth, but knowing that another valley's probably coming and then being able to come through that valley, focusing on trauma, God, and the 12 steps, sky's the limit. So great job. Thanks for coming out. We love you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love you guys too. I love APN. Let me just throw out one more piece of guidance for anybody listening.
Love it.
Right? I believe that treatment, therapy, mental health practices are preventative works as much as they are measures to take once you're in a crisis. So I would urge anybody listening that if you're even wondering if something's going on with you, take the preventative measure to find out, right? I stopped my prevention when I stopped going to therapy and it landed me having to come back to trauma treatment, right? Which was for the better because I learned a lot of new things, but the prevention is just as important as the actual work. It's like, it's just, you don't have to go into a crisis mode. You don't.
The house doesn't have to burn down.
It doesn't.
No, you know what I was thinking about? I like that analogy, but it got probably back to like the football days where like, we're probably not going to have to run this play, but like let's practice it a million times right now. So like, that one time we're ready to go.
The onside kick.
Yep.
Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for traveling across the country to be here. We really appreciate it. I know you're visiting some friends while you're here, so enjoy that.
Yep.
And to wrap up, thank you everyone for listening to another episode. We really appreciate that. If you would like to see our previous episodes, you could see them at apn.com/podcasts. And if you'd like to get in contact with us, there are multiple different ways. You could email us at podpod@apn.com, or we have socials, Facebook, Instagram. Feel free to DM us there too. We're looking for feedback, and if any alumni are looking to be part of this podcast, please feel free to let us know as we're looking for some new guests. Thank you again.
Silky smooth.
Dude,
Yeah, thank you guys.
Way to end there. Wow.
Wow.
What a good reader.
Unbelievable.
Didn't even look at the board.
No, I saw it. You were laser focused.
Can we just also shout out that Andy's phone went out 1,000 times?
Right?
during this
You can't
podcast,
just turn it
and
off.
He was like, make sure you turn off your phones.
Yeah, let's put him in the professionals group for like a week or something.
Serenity now.
Unbelievable.